This is a preview of the Atlantic Lighthouses Cape Hatteras flight plan, starting in Charleston, Charleston Executive, and just basically meandering up the Atlantic coast. There's some forts that we're visiting, and then as many lighthouses as I could find imagery for, including Cape Hatteras Lighthouse, which is a Microsoft Flight Simulator world map point of interest, and then landing at Kill Devil Hills, first flight airport, the Kitty Hawk Airport, which is also, I think, a point of interest there as well. So let's go ahead and fly it. It's kind of a long flight. I'm flying the NX Cub, although I did name my waypoint numbers in accordance with the Garmin numbering scheme. So if you fly any of the aircraft with the Garmin cockpit, it should be fine. But I'm flying the NX Cub just because it's fast and it's fun. So let's go ahead and fly it. Okay, so we're taking off from Charleston Executive Airport and heading for Morris Island Lighthouse. These flights are free to fly for everyone, so download them off at simflightplan.com/downloads, load them up in World Map, and you're ready to fly. Got some wind today. No need to climb. We've only got, about 5.5 miles to Morris Island Lighthouse, so this will be our first look at whether we'll get a 3D lighthouse or whether it's just a circle on the ground. Well, so Morris Island Lighthouse is supposed to be out there on the shoal somewhere, I believe, out here in the middle of the inlet. It's just not plenty tall enough. It's just not probably a big enough footprint for Microsoft Flight Simulator to pick it up as something out here in the ocean. But I don't even see a breakwater for it. Bit windy and a bit hazy today. Should have cheated and turned off the weather. Okay, so Fort Sumner we should be able to see. I think that's it in the harbor there. That's Fort Sumner. That's pretty well rendered, looks like. Looks like you can even see some of the cannon. Yeah, those look like cannon laying on the ground there. But I mean, the ones on the ground even look like cannon. Looks like they're even rendered that way. Huh, cool. That's Fort Sumter National Monument. I think there's some other forts actually along the shore. I thought there were like 3 or 4 of them here along the shore of the harbor. Let's see, the battery. I think this entire harbor is heavily defended from the U.S. Civil War. That's Charleston, South Carolina. I guess that's the battery, basically the parking lot there in a park, I guess. And the suspension bridge. I don't know why Flight Simulator's got a problem with that. I mean, it's fairly, I don't know if you call it standard, but it's a suspension bridge. I mean, they're all over the world. And right along here is Fort Moultrie. I don't know if there'll be anything to see. I assume this little park up here. Oh yeah, looks like there's cannon positions and whatnot. I thought maybe this was a lighthouse, but apparently not. Oh, maybe it is. Oh yeah, Sullivan's Island Lighthouse. Guess I missed that one. Well, there's Fort Caswell, kind of striking out on lighthouses, but there seems to be a fair number of defensive emplacements, forts and such to see. Supposed to be Oak Island Lighthouse right here at the end of this little channel here. I'm going to assume that's circular building on the end is probably it, but there's no Flight Simulator didn't recognize it as a lighthouse, but it should be right there It's probably that parking lot between the road and the beach, maybe. I mean, it's a pretty substantial lighthouse, but it's really narrow. But there's Fort Caswell again. There's North Carolina Aquarium at Fort Fisher. And that's the famous Cape Fear River, or infamous Cape Fear River from the movies. Leads up to Wilmington. There should be some interesting sights along the waterfront in Wilmington, I would guess. Well, there's a Battleship North Carolina, clear as day, along the Cape Fear River here in Wilmington. I'm not going to put a pin for it. It's just, you'll just have to fly up the Cape Fear River until you get to Wilmington. You can't miss it. That's definitely the Battleship North Carolina. In all its glory. That adds a little bit of extra distance to the flight plan if you fly up the river here, but again, it's just up the Cape Fear River to Wilmington, North Carolina. Probably adds maybe 10 or 20 miles to what's already a pretty long stretch between Oak Island Lighthouse and Fort Macon. That's all Fort Macon State Park, all the way to the point. That's probably the giant parking lot for it. In terms of the fort itself, I thought there were some cannon batteries maybe left. Oh, it's all down here. There it is. Yeah, there's the traditional pentagon shape, although it's kind of rendered like a modern building. That's clearly Fort Macon. Let me check to see how it looks in the satellite. Pretty much just like that. And that's Fort Macon. And then Ocracoke Island is next, which I think is the beginning of the Outer Banks, which will take us to Hatteras and ultimately Kitty Hawk. Well, so that's Ocracoke Island, and heading out to the Outer Banks out beyond it, which is where we're going, out to Hatteras. I don't see the lighthouse at all. I mean, that seems like a pretty substantial lighthouse. So that was Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. I mean, it is a world map point of interest, so you'd expect it to be rendered properly, and it definitely was. I didn't even check the photogrammetry here. That's definitely it. I think we can basically follow the Outer Banks, but we can cut a little distance off if we cut out across the bay here. What is this? Or Pamlico Sound. And then we'll mess around at Kitty Hawk before we land. Well, there's our Bodie Island lighthouse, or at least the shadow for it. Looks kind of like an oil tank, but you can see from the long shadow, that's it. It's supposed to be... Where is it? There we go. I mean, that seems like a pretty substantial lighthouse. So I didn't actually realize there's a legit town here that could be washed away at any time by a hurricane way out here. So there's our Wright Brothers monument next to the runway. You can almost read what's on there. Alright, welcome to First Flight Airport. I guess we'll let our friend in the jet here go ahead and take off. So, I mean, we're supposed to be about lighthouses, but we saw a couple forts and the Battleship North Carolina, which was pretty cool. So, there's some stuff to see along the eastern seaboard here. This flight plan will be available on simflightplan.com/downloads. I'll include the link to it in the description box. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe.